August 480 BCE, a coastal pass in central Greece. 300 Spartan hoplites and roughly 7,000 Greek allies positioned themselves between cliff face and sea at a bottleneck called Thermopylae, the hot gates, where thermal springs bubble from rock, and the roadway narrows to 15 meters at its tightest point. King Xerxes of Persia commands an invasion force modern estimates place between 80,000 and 300,000, with Herodotus claiming over 2 million. The Spartans know the math. They also know the ground. The Greeks rebuild it now, stacking stone across the narrowest section. Leonidas, Sparta's king, positions his 300 Spartiates, full Spartan citizens who've survived the Agoge training regime, at the wall's center. The Thespians contribute 700 hoplites. The Thebans send 400, though their loyalty remains suspect. Phocians, Locrians, Corinthians, Arcadians, and others fill out the Greek force to roughly 7,000. Total. They have 4 days before contact. Athens between 1936 and 1939, which mapped the ancient coastline and wall remnants before modern sedimentation altered the topography. Now back to the information. Persian scouts report the Spartans exercising and combing their long hair outside the wall. Demaratus, an exiled Spartan king now advising Xerxes, explains this is how Spartans prepare for death. Xerxes doesn't believe men would stay to die for a pass. On the morning of day 4, he sends median and Scythian infantry forward in waves. The Greeks hold bronze-faced aspis shields 90 centimeters across, iron-tipped doru spears 2 to 3 meters long, and short xiphos swords. The Spartans fight in phalanx, a formation 8 ranks deep where the front line presents a bronze shield wall and spear points, and the rear ranks push forward with their bodies and shields, generating collective momentum. In the 15-meter choke point at the rebuilt Phocian wall, the Persians cannot deploy their cavalry and cannot flank the phalanx. They come straight at the shield wall. Herodotus records the Medes falling in large numbers before the Spartans rotate the phalanx backward in apparent retreat, then wheel and surge forward again, killing the Persians, who rushed the perceived opening. The tactic repeats throughout the day. By evening, the Medes withdraw with catastrophic losses. Xerxes sends the Scythians. Same result. The bodies pile high enough that the next waves stumble over their own dead. Day 2 at the hot gates. Xerxes commits his immortals, the 10,000-strong elite infantry unit so named because casualties are immediately replaced to maintain constant numbers. Their commander is Hydarnes. They carry short spears and wicker shields like other Persian infantry, but wear scale armor and cloth caps rather than helmets. They advance on the Greek position in formation. The Spartans hold the wall. The immortals cannot break through. Herodotus notes the immortals' shorter spears prove fatal at close quarters where the Greek doru dominates reach and the phalanx depth prevents penetration. The immortals withdraw at nightfall with heavy casualties. Xerxes watches from a throne positioned on a hillside east of the pass. Sources claim he leaps from his seat 3 times during the fighting, fearing for his army. The terrain works against every Persian advantage. Cavalry cannot charge over broken ground and cannot maneuver in the narrow space. Archers cannot suppress the Greeks because the phalanx shields deflect arrows, and the cliff face prevents high-angle volleys from behind the Greek line. The Persian numerical superiority becomes irrelevant when only a few dozen men can engage the front rank at any moment. The Greeks rotate fresh fighters to the front while exhausted men fall back, maintaining constant pressure. The Spartans anchor the center, and the allied hoplites on either side hold formation because the Spartans never break. Behind the Greek position at a place called Alpini, the path is rough, suitable for infantry but not cavalry, and takes a full night to traverse. Leonidas knows the path exists. He's stationed the 1,000 Phocians on the heights to guard it. Ephialtes takes Hydarnes and the immortals up the trail after dark. The sound of 10,000 feet on fallen oak leaves carries in the mountain stillness. The Phocians form up on a ridge above the path. Hydarnes halts, sees the Greek formation, and asks Ephialtes who these men are. Ephialtes identifies them as Phocians. Hydarnes deploys archers. The Persians loose volleys into the Phocian position. The Phocians, not trained for the sustained close quarters grinding that Spartans endure, retreat upslope and take defensive positions on higher ground, expecting the immortals to pursue and engage. The immortals ignore them, march past, and continue down the Anapia path toward Alpeni. The Phocians cannot stop them now without abandoning their defensive position and pursuing downhill into an enemy force that outnumbers them 10 to 1. They send runners to warn Leonidas. Greek deserters from the Persian camp also arrive with the same intelligence. Leonidas holds a council. The strategic purpose of the stand is to delay Xerxes long enough for the Greek fleet to engage the Persian navy at Artemisium and for Greek city-states to mobilize defenses further south. The delay has been achieved. Staying means encirclement and annihilation. Leonidas orders most of the allied forces to withdraw south. The Spartans will stay. The Thespians, led by Demophiles, refuse to leave and stay with the Spartans. The Theban 400 remain, though sources suggest Leonidas keeps them as hostages against Theban treachery. The final stand begins with roughly 1,500 Greeks, 300 Spartiates, 700 Thespians, 400 Thebans, and Helots, Spartan slaves who serve as attendants and light infantry, whose exact count is unrecorded, but likely numbers several hundred. Herodotus records 2 Persian nobles killed in this phase, Abracomes and Hyperanthes, both brothers of Xerxes. The Greeks fight with spears until the spear shafts splinter, then draw swords. Leonidas falls in the morning assault. His body becomes the focal point of a brutal melee. The Spartans and Thespians drive the Persians back 4 times to recover the king's corpse. Both sides take extreme casualties in the fight over Leonidas' body. The Immortals emerge from the Anopia path behind the Greek position. The Thebans break formation and surrender immediately, confirming suspicions about their reliability. Most survive, but are branded with the king's mark as prisoners. The Spartans and Thespians retreat to a small hill within the pass, a mound approximately 10 meters high, and form a final defensive circle. They're out of spears. They fight with swords until the blades break. Then they fight with hands and teeth. Herodotus records the detail. Xerxes orders his troops to avoid close combat and to overwhelm the position with missile fire. Persian archers surround the hill and loose volleys until every Greek is dead. 2 Spartan survivors, Aristodemus and Pantites, were away from the battle on messenger duty. Aristodemus returns to Sparta alive and is shunned as a coward. He redeems himself by dying in suicidal valor at Plataea the following year. Pantites hangs himself rather than face the disgrace. The Greeks lose roughly 4,000 total, including the 1,500 who died on day 3. The delay achieves its objective. The Greek fleet at Artemisium fights the Persian navy to a stalemate, preventing Xerxes from bypassing Thermopylae by sea. The Persian advance continues south, but the Greeks now have time to prepare the defense at Salamis, where the narrow straits will again negate Persian numbers. Xerxes orders Leonidas' body decapitated and crucified. The act is unusual for Persian culture, which typically treats enemy dead with respect, and suggests the king's fury at the delay and casualties. After the Persian withdrawal from Greece in 479 BCE, the Greeks retrieve Leonidas' remains and rebury them at Sparta. A stone lion monument is erected at Thermopylae. Leon, in Greek, means lion, a pun on Leonidas' name, with an inscription, attributed to the poet Simonides. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. Obedient to their laws. Not obedient to orders, but to laws, the Spartan code that forbids retreat and demands death before dishonor. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the archaeological records published in the Journal of Hellenic Studies 1939 volume on the Thermopylae coastline reconstruction, which used ceramic evidence and ancient harbor markers to establish the precise width of the 480 BCE pass, corroborated by Diodorus Siculus's Library of History, written in the 1st century BCE, which provides casualty estimates and tactical details missing from Herodotus. Now back to the information. Xerxes withdraws to Asia, leaving his general Mardonius with a land army to continue the campaign. In 479 BCE at Plataea, the Greeks destroy Mardonius' force in open battle. The Spartans anchor the Greek right wing, they break the Persian center and kill Mardonius. The Persian Wars end. Spartan society revolves around producing soldiers capable of the agage product. Men who hold formation when death is certain, who obey the laws that demand they never retreat, who would rather die than break the phalanx. Every Spartan male enters the agage at age 7. They live in barracks, train in weapons and endurance, and learn that personal survival is secondary to unit cohesion. A Spartan who returns alive from a lost battle faces disgrace. A Spartan who dies holding his position receives honor. The system produces hoplites who do not rout. At Thermopylae, the 300 demonstrate why that matters. The thermal springs that gave the hot gates their name still flow, but the strategic bottleneck no longer exists. Modern Thermopylae is a tourist site with a bronze statue of Leonidas and markers indicating where the ancient coastline ran. The hill where the Spartans made their final stand is barely distinguishable in the current topography. Excavations in the 1930s uncovered Persian arrowheads, Greek spear points, and fragments of bronze armor. Near the ancient wall line, a mass grave east of the pass yielded skeletal remains consistent with battle trauma. Cut marks on bone from edged weapons, bronze arrowhead fragments embedded in vertebrae, blunt force trauma to skulls. The bones suggest a mix of Greek and Persian dead buried together, likely after the battle when the Persians cleared the field. Sparta's military law forbids retreat, but commanders exercise discretion in hopeless situations. Leonidas could have withdrawn the entire force on day 3. He chose to stay with his 300, and the Thespians chose to stay with him. Some historians argue the decision was religious. The Carnea festival in Sparta forbade military action during its observance, and the 300 were an advance guard buying time until the festival ended and the full Spartan army could march. Others argue it was political. Sparta needed to demonstrate commitment to the Greek alliance, and a sacrificial stand proved Spartan resolve. A third interpretation is purely tactical. Every additional day the Spartans held the pass gave the Greek fleet at Artemisium more time to damage the Persian navy, and Leonidas calculated that 1,500 men fighting to the death in a bottleneck would cost Xerxes a full day or more, which they did, has in the outcome. The delay at Thermopylae, the casualties, and the humiliation of watching a tiny Greek force hold off his entire army for 3 days must have been catastrophic for the king's prestige. The decapitation and crucifixion of Leonidas's corpse suggests rage, not policy. Persian kings typically grant honorable burial to brave enemies. Xerxes breaks that tradition because Leonidas cost him something irreplaceable: time, men, and the psychological momentum of an unstoppable advance. His left side and overlaps with the shield of the man to his right. In phalanx formation, each hoplite's right side is protected by his neighbor's shield. This creates mutual dependence. If one man breaks, the man to his left loses protection. The system requires trust and discipline. The Doru spear extends 2 to 3 meters, with an iron spearhead on one end and a bronze butt spike on the other. The spike serves as a backup weapon if the spearhead breaks, and also allows the hoplite to plant the spear in the ground as a brace against enemy charges. In close combat, the hoplite can use short underhand or overhand thrusts, targeting gaps in enemy armor: throat, groin, armpit. The short spear is approximately 1 to 1.5 meters long with a bronze or iron tip. Effective in loose formation or cavalry charges, it's outmatched in close phalanx combat. Persian archers carry composite bows with effective ranges of 150 to 200 meters. In open terrain, the archers soften enemy formations before infantry engages. At Thermopylae, the phalanx shields and the cliff wall geometry prevent archers from suppressing the Greeks until the final encirclement. The Immortals carry better armor than standard Persian infantry, scale shirts and sometimes bronze helmets, but still lack the full bronze cuirass, greaves, and helmet of the Greek hoplite. The armor gap matters when fighting presses into sword range, where blows land on torsos and limbs. The phalanx depth of 8 ranks creates enormous forward pressure. The first 3 ranks hold spears leveled at the enemy. The rear 5 ranks push with their shields against the backs of the men in front. This generates collective momentum that can drive the formation forward into enemy lines. The pressure is physical and psychological. Hoplites in the front rank experience crushing force from behind and cannot easily retreat even if they want. 2. The formation itself enforces discipline. At Thermopylae, the Persians face this pressure in a space too narrow for flanking or withdrawal. Each wave that hits the phalanx dies, and the next wave must advance over the corpses, climbing uphill over their own dead while Greek spears wait at the top. If the Persians lost 20,000 and the Greeks lost 4,000, the ratio is 5 to 1. If the Persian casualties were lower, say 10,000, the ratio is 2.5 to 1. Either way, the Greeks inflict disproportionate damage. The bottleneck removes every Persian advantage except the ability to feed fresh troops into the meat grinder indefinitely. Xerxes has that ability, and he uses it. The Greeks cannot hold forever because they lack the numbers to rotate formations continuously. Exhaustion and wounds accumulate. The Anapeia path breaks the stalemate by allowing the Persians to bypass the bottleneck. Without that path, the Greeks might have held another day or more. With it, the battle becomes a countdown to encirclement. They're selected from the Spartiate class, full citizens with land and helots to work it. Leonidas chooses men with living sons, ensuring that each family line continues even if the father dies. This detail, recorded by Herodotus, underscores the premeditation. Leonidas knows this is a death mission and picks men whose bloodlines won't end with them. The 300 include Leonidas's royal bodyguard, the Hippais, a unit of 300 elite warriors who accompany the king in battle. They are the best fighters Sparta has. Their presence at Thermopylae is a statement. Sparta sends its finest, not expendable troops. The message to the other Greek city-states is clear. Sparta will not ask others to make sacrifices it won't make itself. The Thespian 700 receive less attention in popular retellings, but deserve equal recognition. Thespiae is a small Boeotian city-state with no obligation to follow Sparta into a suicide mission. The Thespians stay anyway. When Leonidas offers them the chance to leave on day 3, Demophilus and his men refuse. They die alongside the Spartans on the hill. Ancient sources give them full credit for the stand, and the Simonides inscription includes them. Here, 4,000 from the Peloponnese once fought 3 million. 4,000 is the total Greek force present over the 3 days, including those who withdrew. The inscription honors them all, but the Spartans and Thespians who died on day 3 earn the special commemoration. The Thespian decision to stay is voluntary and therefore, in some ethical frameworks, more remarkable than the Spartan decision, which is mandated by law and culture. At Thermopylae, the Helots die defending a state that enslaves them. Some historians speculate that Helots who fight bravely in battle might earn better treatment or even freedom, creating an incentive to stay and fight. No records confirm this. What's certain is that Helots are present, they fight, and they die. Their contribution is invisible in the classical sources, but real in the archaeological record. not all the Greek dead at Thermopylae are hoplites. Some are lightly armed or unarmed, consistent with helot roles. Their absence from the historical narrative is its own tragedy. The 400 who marched to Thermopylae may be a faction that opposes Medism, or they may be political prisoners sent by a pro-Persian Theban government. When the immortals appear and the battle becomes hopeless, they surrender and are branded. The branding is a Persian practice for marking captives. The Thebans survive and later claim they were forced to join Leonidas against their will. The truth is murky. What's clear is that they don't die on the hill with the Spartans and Thespians, and that choice, whether forced or voluntary, defines their place in the story. Sustain them through 3 days of combat. The Spartans exercise and comb their hair. The hair ritual is a pre-battle tradition. Spartan warriors wear their hair long, and grooming it before combat is a statement of readiness and contempt for the enemy. The Persians observe this and report it to Xerxes. Demaratus explains it means the Spartans are preparing to kill or be killed. The explanation is accurate. The 4-day wait is the calm before the annihilation. Leonidas is 50-something years old at Thermopylae, past the prime age for heavy infantry combat, but he holds the line with younger men and dies in the thick of the fighting. His death on day 3 triggers the desperate melee over his body. For the Spartans, recovering the king's corpse is a sacred duty. They fight 4 separate engagements to retrieve him, driving the Persians back each time. The final retreat to the hill happens only after Leonidas' body is secured. The historical Ephialtes may have been a Malian local with knowledge of the mountain trails and no particular loyalty to the Greek cause. From his perspective, the Persians are winning the war, and guiding them around the bottleneck is pragmatic. From the Greek perspective, he sells out his people for silver. The path itself is a known route. Leonidas stations the Phocians there because he's aware it exists. But Ephialtes provides the local expertise that makes the night march feasible. Without him, Hydarnes might not attempt it or might get lost in the dark. With him, the immortals bypass the hot gates and doom the Greeks. They also have a defensive position on the ridge. They form up, and Hydarnes deploys archers. The Persians loose arrows. The Phocians retreat upslope instead of holding the ridge and forcing the immortals into close combat. The retreat makes sense from a survival standpoint. The Phocians are outnumbered and not Spartan-level disciplined, but the retreat allows the immortals to pass unhindered. The Phocians take the safe option, and the Greeks below pay for it. The counterfactual is worth considering. If the Phocians hold the ridge and force a close-quarters fight, they might delay the immortals for hours or longer. The delay could give Leonidas time to withdraw or to kill more Persians in the pass. Instead, the immortals march around them and arrive on schedule. The Phocian failure is one of the battle's hinge moments. The Persian immortals' name derives from the replacement system. 10,000 men, casualties immediately replaced. The unit functions as a strategic reserve and royal guard. At Thermopylae, they fail on day 2 in frontal assault and succeed on day 3 via encirclement. The day 2 failure is informative. The immortals are the best infantry Persia has, equipped and trained above standard. They attack the Greek line and cannot break it. The longer Greek spears, the heavier Greek armor, and the phalanx depth combine to stop the elite Persian unit cold. This tells Xerxes that no amount of frontal assault will work. The pass is a hard counter to his army. The Anapeia path becomes the only viable option. Hydarnes and the immortals execute the night march and the encirclement professionally. The tactic works. The Greeks die. But the immortals' inability to break the phalanx in open combat foreshadows Persian troubles later in the war. At Plataea, the immortals face the Spartans again in open terrain with room to maneuver, and the Spartans destroy them. The bottleneck at Thermopylae amplifies Greek advantages, but the advantages exist even in open battle. The aspis, doru, cuirass, helmet, and greaves represent months of a craftsman's income. Only relatively wealthy citizens can afford the kit. This creates a citizen-soldier model where military service and political rights are linked. The hoplite fights to defend his land and his city. He's not a professional soldier or a conscript, but a property owner with skin in the game. The system produces motivated, disciplined infantry who hold formation because breaking means losing everything. At Thermopylae, the 300 are not just soldiers, they're citizens, landowners, and heads of families with everything to lose. Their willingness to die for a pass is rooted in the understanding that if Xerxes wins, their city, land, and families are forfeit. The existential stakes make the stand rational, even in the face of certain death. The units speak different languages, use different equipment, and have varying levels of motivation. The Medes and Scythians, who die in the first assaults at Thermopylae, are subject peoples of the Persian Empire, not Persians themselves. Their willingness to die for Xerxes' ambitions is questionable. The immortals, drawn from the Persian and Median heartlands, are more reliable, but even they cannot overcome the Greek phalanx in a bottleneck. The multi-ethnic army works in open terrain where cavalry and archers can exploit gaps and flanks. In the hot gates, the diversity becomes irrelevant. Every unit that attacks dies the same way, on Greek spears. In 480 BCE, the springs flow near the battlefield, and soldiers from both sides might have used them. The name Thermopylae, hot gates, is ancient, predating the battle. The springs are known locally for their heat and smell. The juxtaposition of hot springs and cold violence is thematically resonant, but practically incidental. The springs don't affect the battle. The terrain does. The aftermath of Thermopylae reverberates through the rest of the war. The Persians advance south and sack Athens. The Athenians evacuate their city and rely on the fleet. At Salamis, in September 480 BCE, the Greek navy lures the Persian fleet into narrow straits and annihilates it. Xerxes watches from shore as his ships burn. He returns to Asia, leaving Mardonius to finish the campaign. In 479 BCE, the Greeks destroy Mardonius at Plataea. On the same day, according to tradition, the Greek fleet destroys the remaining Persian ships at Mycale on the Ionian coast. The double victory ends the Persian Wars. The thread from Thermopylae to Plataea is the Greek confidence that they can defeat Persia if they choose the ground. Thermopylae proves the principle. Salamis and Plataea execute it at scale. The Simonides epitaph becomes one of the most famous in history. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. The Greek original is an elegiac couplet in dactylic hexameter. The phrasing emphasizes obedience to law, not to a king or god. The Spartans die because their laws command it. The laws are the Agog system, the military code, the cultural expectation that Spartan soldiers never retreat. The laws are also, more abstractly, the idea that freedom requires sacrifice and that some things are worth dying for. The epitaph is propaganda. Simonides is commissioned to write it, but effective propaganda because it captures a truth. The Spartans did stay, and they did die, and they did it because their culture demanded it. The obedience is both admirable and horrifying. A society that trains men to die on command is a society that will never be conquered, but it's also a society that consumes its sons. The narrative simplifies to a clean story. 300 Spartans versus 1,000,000 Persians. A last stand against impossible odds. The real battle is messier. 7,000 Greeks hold for 2 days, then 1,500 stay for day 3, and the 1,500 include non-Spartans who are just as brave. The simplification serves a purpose. The story of the 300 is repeatable, memeable, teachable. It fits the heroic mold. The fuller story is more accurate, but less iconic. Both stories are true in different ways. Roman legions adapt the phalanx into the maniple system. European pike formations in the medieval and early modern periods echo the phalanx. The principle holds. Massed infantry with long weapons in tight formation can hold ground against cavalry and light troops if the terrain prevents flanking. The hot gates is the classic demonstration. Excavations in the 1930s found arrowheads, spear points, armor fragments, and the mass grave. Later surveys mapped the ancient coastline using soil cores and ceramic evidence. The results confirm the ancient sources. The pass was much narrower in 480 BCE than today. The wall remnants are still traceable. The hill where the final stand occurred is identifiable. The thermal springs still flow. The battlefield exists, even though the topography has changed. Standing at modern Thermopylae with the knowledge of where the ancient coast ran, you can visualize the bottleneck and understand why 300 men could hold it for 3 days. The Delian League forms under Athenian leadership to counter Persia. The League eventually becomes an Athenian empire. Sparta and Athens fight the Peloponnesian War from 431 to 404 BCE, tearing Greece apart. The irony is that the Greeks defeat Persia together and then destroy each other. Thermopylae and Plataea unite them for a moment. The unity doesn't last. The memory of the Persian Wars becomes a tool for political rhetoric. Spartans invoke Thermopylae to claim military primacy. Athenians invoke Salamis to claim the same. The battles that save Greece become ammunition in Greek civil wars. The inscription repeats the Simonides epitaph. The statue is a 20th century edition, erected long after the battle, but it marks the site and draws visitors. Thousands come each year to see where the stand happened. The memorial is a reminder that some stories don't die. Thermopylae enters the cultural bloodstream and stays there. It becomes a symbol of courage against overwhelming odds, of duty unto death, of a small group holding the line so others can live. The symbol is bigger than the battle. The famous line attributed to Spartan mothers is, "Come back with your shield or on it." The shield is the aspis, too heavy to carry if you're running away, so a soldier who returns without it has fled. A dead soldier is carried home on his shield. The line is probably apocryphal, but it captures the ethos. Spartan women are complicit in the culture that demands men die rather than retreat. The mothers of the 300 send their sons to Thermopylae knowing they won't return. The wives kiss their husbands goodbye with the same knowledge. The culture that produces Thermopylae is not just male. It's a total societal commitment to military excellence and to death before dishonor. Medieval and Renaissance writers retell it. Modern militaries study it. The Battle of Thermopylae is taught in war colleges as an example of defensive tactics and morale. The story is adapted into films, novels, and comics. The 1962 film The 300 Spartans is a Cold War allegory. The 2006 film 300, based on Frank Miller's comic, is a stylized, violent, and historically loose retelling. The core story remains recognizable. A small force holds a pass against an empire, and the small force dies but wins something larger than the battle itself. The grave is near the presumed location of the Eastern Persian camp, suggesting the Persians cleared the field and buried the dead without separating friend from foe. The grave's existence confirms the scale of the killing. Enough bodies that individual identification was impractical, so the Persians dug a pit and filled it. The bones lie there now, Greek and Persian together, enemies in death as they were in life. The thermal springs flow a few hundred meters away. The pass is wide and silent. The kill zone is farmland.